Okay, so we're going to talk in this lesson about starting right. Okay, so we're talking about your website development. You're going to get into internet business, and so you want to be able to start your website in an effective way, right? So we went through common mistakes a few weeks ago, and today we're going to talk about starting right, design ideas, getting things up and running for the initial part of the website. So that's really the key. First step is getting it up and running and having it run smoothly. You've tested it, you've run through it yourself. You don't want to be doing the marketing part until you get the creation part done, right? So it's kind of a process. So you want to do the creation part, right, and have that up and running, and then you move into a marketing emphasis, and then kind of towards the end, once you begin to get more traffic, then you want to go through some processes of evaluating where you are now, right? So can you handle the amount of traffic that comes in, or are you getting no traffic coming in and you have to make some adjustments? So, but the first part of getting it up and running and having an effective website designed from the beginning, it's much better to understand these principles, build the website right the first time, than to be trying to troubleshoot your website design, right? You're going to have enough issues trying to troubleshoot your marketing approach, right? Because that will require some troubleshooting, because you got to find your customers. You got to figure out where they're looking and what appeals to them. And so there's a lot of trial and error in the marketing side of things, right? So you want to eliminate as many variables as possible. And so one way to do that is to get started the right way with your website design, right? So a couple of things here, just a few statistics to start us off with. The difference between an average site, right, and a user-friendly site is that an average site will expect 0.7% of users to purchase, right? So that may be depressing to you if you've never seen that number, but I mean that's about what it is, because you get a lot of people that just they click through, they just look at it for a minute and go somewhere else. So so you would expect a 0.07, which means you're going to need 140 or so people to visit your site for every one that's going to purchase. Now, obviously that number is not a rule or something like that, but it is the average. So if you look at all of the commercial websites out there, they generally have to have about 140 people visit before one of them buys. Now, that does not take into consideration the fact that one individual may have visited your site 10 times before they purchase. So it would look like they were 10 different people when really they weren't. It's the same person visiting the site multiple times, going back and forth. I know I do that quite a bit. If there's a site that I like, I may have visited it 20 times when I'm going back and forth between other sites trying to figure out, is this what I really want to purchase or not, or looking at different options. And so I would appear to, as though I was several customers when really I wasn't. So it's not that you have to get 140 people to look at your site, but on average you're going to have about 140 visits to your site, which might represent 30 different people or 40 different people, who knows. But just to give you an idea, with an excellent navigation and design, you can get that number up to 1, all the way up to sometimes 4%, right? That may not seem like a lot, but that's significant, right? If you could find yourself somewhere between 1 and 4% of people that visit your site are purchasing, that's a pretty significant number, right? So you want to be monitoring this, right? Many of the analytics packages on e-commerce sites will allow you to monitor where you're at with your percentage. And so if it was me, I think I would look every month or so, and you don't need to do it every day, but maybe on a monthly routine, last day of the month or something, go in there, pull up what is the percentage for the month of people that visited your site versus actual purchases, and maybe you keep that in a chart, right? and that will help you with your marketing if you go back in and you can monitor which months seemed higher, and try and figure out why, right? It may not be your marketing. It could be that you have a product that just sells better during certain times of the year. My wife and I we had created wedding invitations, right? And so I came to find out that there were two main stretches of time when the sales would be very high, and then other two parts of the year when it was like nothing, And so from January all the way into May and June, sales were pretty high. Over the summer they slowed down some for a couple months. July and August were pretty slow. Then September, October would pick up again because of fall weddings, right? And so we kind of figured that we would have to spread out our income a little bit because it was a fairly seasonal business, right? Okay. So if you can get your numbers up, and monitor why, because sometimes it is your marketing, right? You try some new marketing thing, your numbers don't do anything. And sometimes you're just discovering your industry, right? That your industry is just not good during that time of year, right? Okay. So you want, the principle there is you want customers to go from viewing to purchase as quickly as possible, right? So that's what we mean by having an effective navigation and design built in to your website, that it is not confusing or hard for someone to be able to go from your front page to your checkout. It needs to be seamless, right? They should be right from your front page. It should be very clear where your products are, and then once you get onto the product page, it should be very clear how to check out. That's the two things: the transition from first page to product, and from product to checkout. If those two transitions are seamless and obvious, then you'll do well. Okay. Now, some other things. This last one, try to avoid Flash. So if you're not familiar with Flash, Flash is a kind of computer for website design. It's kind of a computer language, so to speak, that generates some of the animation kind of thing. So if you've ever been on a website and all of a sudden some animation starts going, maybe a quick 15-second clip, or sometimes it's an actor, like a person that pops up on the screen that says, "Hey, welcome to XYZ company. If you have any questions, we're here to help you." The trouble with those, it's kind of creative and it looks kind of neat, but the issue is that for a lot of people's computers, it bogs them down, right? And so you can't just say that because on your computer it comes up quickly. You may have a new computer or something, or a more reliable internet connection. But when you're talking about internet business, there's all kinds of people that have modest internet connections, that or older computers, right? And so if you put something that's fancy, that's going to take up a lot of memory, that's going to have it's going to be hard for the computers to pull it up right off the bat, it's going to bog it down, then you begin to start losing customers, right? Because even if you have an old computer, you still fall into that trap of wanting websites to come up as fast as possible. And that's just human nature, that if people have to wait on something, they're so used to not waiting extended periods of time for the internet that they tend to be very quick triggered, right? And so if the page isn't coming up, they'll try something else. Typically what I do is, if the page isn't coming up, I'll refresh it one time. If it still doesn't come up slow, I'll try something else. And that's a pretty standard experience for a lot of people, So you want to avoid things that will slow down your page's ability to pull up quickly, right? And so when you're creating one, if you see this last line, I said it's more frustrating than inspiring. When you're creating one, you think it's inspiring, you think it's creative, you think it's neat, you think people are going to really want your product because they see the time you put into that Flash thing. But the truth of the matter is, you'll probably lose more people than you will impress, right? Because most people try and stop the flash thing a lot of times as soon as it comes up anyways, because it's distracting from what they're trying to do. Same thing with videos that are programmed to start as soon as someone comes on the page. You got to be real careful with that as well, because that's a memory hog, and it will cause people to have a hard time pulling it up. And then some of those things are very difficult for mobile applications as well. A lot of people nowadays are trying to pull things up on their phone and stuff like that. So you want to be very careful trying to be so creative on your home page that you become a page that is hard to pull up, right? And then all of a sudden you end up losing more business than you draw in, right? Okay. So some things here to think about from a more technical standpoint when you're actually doing the building of the page. All right. So the first one, all images should be compressed so they will be fast. So when I mean fast, I mean it will pull up quickly. The page will pull up. On your front page, there should be some kind of pictures. You don't want just plain text, and there should be a picture of your product somewhere prominently displayed, not just off in a corner somewhere. When somebody pulls up your front page, the first thing they should see is something that you sell. You don't have to put everything that you sell up there, but there should be something that you sell, because they're making an instant judgment about whether they're at the right spot or not, right? And so you want to be able to pull it up. And as soon as it comes up, there should be something that you sell center stage there, so that whoever's pulling up the page clearly says, oh, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be, and make it a nice picture so that they're impressed. That's how you impress them, is with a good looking product right on that front page, right? So if that's how you do it, and you're going to have this really nice picture or pictures, you can have a few. Don't overdo it, right? You don't want to look cluttered and messy. It's much better to have maybe one or two pictures, or maybe on a slide show, where it fades to the next picture and then 3 seconds later to the next. That's okay. That doesn't really slow down a computer's ability to pull it up. You can have the pictures on the front page, and that's okay. But if you're going to put pictures on there, they have to be compressed, right? And so whenever you're doing it, don't just take just a regular photo that you took from your camera and try and just load that photo in without doing some type of compression to it. So a lot of software, Adobe, Photoshop, and all the other versions of software that attempt to do the same thing that Photoshop does, most of them have a compression option where you can change. Basically what that does is it keeps the picture almost exactly the same, but it condenses the amount of space, the amount of memory that it takes to hold the picture, right? So that when your customer's computer is trying to pull it up, you don't have 10 really big pictures that take up a whole bunch of memory and a whole bunch of bandwidth trying to be pulled up on their computer. If you compress them, those same 10 pictures come up much faster, right? And they still look the same. Because pictures that you take with a camera can be blown up much bigger than the camera screen itself, and they're designed to be that way, so that you can take a good picture with your camera and blow it up, get it bigger, make it a wall painting or a wall picture rather, turn it into canvas, do something. So the cameras are designed to take a big size file photo, so that it doesn't have to stay the size of the screen that you have on your camera. You can make it a bigger picture. You can get a printout, an 8x12 printout or something to put on your frame, and it'll work just fine, right? But so the issue is the photos taken directly by the camera are much larger than you need, because what's going to go on your web page is actually a very small picture, right? And so you can condense the amount of the file size for that picture, and it still be just as clear and sharp on the web page without taking up as much space. So that's what compression is. So you need to make sure you do that, because that's one mistake that a lot of people make when they're doing these template website building services, right? So it's not a professional building it for you, and you go to a template and you start putting in photos. If you haven't done anything with those photos, then you could be making a very slow website and not even realize it. Okay. I'm gonna do two more in this lesson, and then we'll kind of break this one up because this is a little longer. We'll break this one up into two sections. So the next one, make sure text is easy to read. Now that seems like an obvious one, but there are different personalities that are out there, right? And so some people are very creative and artistic, and so in their mind, if they do something kind of creative, then it's going to be appreciated more. But the truth of the matter is, things that are cursive and stuff like that, when people are first coming to your page, they're looking for understand. They want to know what you're all about if they've never been to your page before. And so, as the designer of the website, you already know what you're about. And so, you put on cursive or some kinds of things that make it look really kind of formal and nice. But the trouble is, then your customers, they don't know anything about you, and they're trying to figure out what your company is, what you sell. Are you the type of company that they want? And so, if your text is hard for them to read, it really it doesn't allow you to bridge the gap with them immediately, right? And first impressions are huge. So you want to make sure that on your front page that everything is easily read, right? You don't want to be so fancy and so creative that when people get on your page, it doesn't immediately appear what you do, right? It should be very clear from the moment someone comes on your page, okay, I'm at the right spot, this is what I want, because there's all kinds of stuff out there on the web, right? And so, people are searching around, and just, it may seem obvious to you that your website does what you think it should, but with other people, they're typing in stuff. They've never been to your site. They're taking the first 15 to 30 seconds of being on your site to even figure out if you sell what they're looking for, right? And so clear text is important, right? What people value more. It's not that being creative is not good, but what people value more when they're searching for products is clarity over creativity, right? And so you want to make sure people can easily read what you're saying. All right, and that kind of ties into this next one. Try not to be so unique that you're confusing to your customers, right? Sometimes we try and we outthink ourselves, and we've got all these, design things we want to put on the front page, and it seems good in theory, but then when your customer gets on there, they don't have the benefit of having worked on this website like you do, and they get in there and they're a little confused about where things are, and confusion is something that will drive customers away. If it they get about 30 seconds in and they're still not fully sure how to get to your products and things about your business, most of the time they'll just search somewhere else. And so don't try and be so unique that you become confusing, right? Standard things, formats, standard text, those types of things, your people aren't going to think you're boring. They're going to be able to clearly see what you do, right? Particularly when you're trying to sell a product, you got to have clear text. It needs to be very blatant. It doesn't mean you can't have color and you can't have vivid imagery, but don't try and do it so much that you end up becoming this artistic expression that is not very clear for customers who just want to come in and buy something, right? Okay. All right. So we'll stop this video there, and then we'll pick up next week with some more practical steps about getting your internet business up and going.